Last week, the USFL made their league debut, and one of the biggest headlines from the league's opening week was a bizarre story of a player getting cut from their team for choosing pizza instead of chicken salad. Yeah, the reasoning for cutting Devion Smith is extremely ridiculous and sends the wrong message to a locker room who has yet to play in a single game. But this got me thinking, were there any NHL players who got cut or traded for ridiculous reasons? And I did find a select few who got dealt away for some crazy reasons, some being factual and others being simply rumors or excuses given by the front office to justify the move they made. And for our first deal, we need to go back to 1971. At the time, a 23-year-old Gary Unger was mostly known for his increasing offensive totals and his unique head of hair that made him stick out amongst the rest. He was a part of a Red Wings team that wasn't very good, and in hopes of turning the team around in the 70-71 season, they would hire Ned Harkness to take over as head coach. Harkness was very strict, Mike Keenan-esque if you will. He was all about discipline and keeping tradition alive, and Harkness demanded that every player on the team cut their hair to make them look more presentable and sharp. This may seem confusing and an extremely weird request, but it's actually like Lou Lamoriello's no facial hair rule and the New York Yankees crew cut clean shaven rule. It's more or less installed as a way to proudly represent the organization, basically showing pride for the team you play for by looking presentable and classy. I would know since I myself am a Yankees fan. But anyways, Gary Unger didn't want to part ways with his long locks, which Ned Harkness couldn't stand, and because of it, he would get shipped off to the St. Louis Blues in a multiplayer deal, with Red Berenson being the main piece going back to Detroit. The rumors at the time were that the Red Wings completely won this deal and the Blues had no clue what they were doing, but they couldn't have been any more wrong, because what Unger would turn into once arriving in St. Louis captivated a new generation of Blues fans as he completely dominated night in and night out. The number 7 in St. Louis is a staple in their history because of Unger, as his 292 goals and 575 points in 662 consecutive games puts him 4th all-time in St. Louis history for goals, points, and games played, scoring at least 30 goals in each season as a Blue and becoming the NHL's Iron Man of the 1970s. The man they called Mr. St. Louis Blue completely changed the franchise, while Berenson would have a few good seasons in Detroit before age finally caught up to him. We've talked about this story already, so we're gonna keep it simple, but almost everyone remembers John Scott's legendary All-Star game, which was arguably the last time the game was good. But what most people don't know is that the league was desperately trying to prevent Scott from taking part in the game at all costs. The league believed that having Scott, a fringe NHL enforcer, would be a mockery of sorts to the game, despite giving the fans the ability to vote him in. So, because they couldn't revoke the fans' decision, many believe the NHL tried to get him out of the game in a different way, as a few weeks before the All-Star game was set to take place, Scott would randomly get traded and then sent down to the AHL. There's two things to point out which makes this deal seem super suspicious. The first being that, at the time, the league had partial control of the Coyotes, and the second being that because he got sent to the minors, he wasn't in the NHL, making him ineligible to participate in the game. So it's believed that the league made the deal on the Coyotes' behalf to prevent Scott from making the game. However, their plan completely backfired, as everyone knows that he did play after all, and his performance is what makes the story take a complete 180. Scott would go on to score multiple goals in the All-Star game and be voted as the game's MVP, getting carried off the ice Rudy style and having the commissioner, the man fans believed tried preventing him from playing, personally hand him a check and a brand new car. The moment is absolutely glorious, and if the league really did try to get Scott kicked from the game, it's a tremendous slap in the face and poetic justice for the journeyman. In the late 1970s, the Maple Leafs assembled a great young core of players, highlighted mainly by Daryl Sittler, who is most known for his historic 10-point game and his not-so-great relationship with the Leafs front office. Punch Imlach had a unique vision to reshape the team to his own particular image, and Imlach viewed Sittler as an obstacle for gaining power over the rest of the Leafs locker room, mainly due to Daryl's insane popularity. But even if he wanted to trade away Sittler, he had one major problem. Sittler had a no-trade clause, making him almost impossible to move unless Daryl was okay with the trade, which obviously he had no plans of going anywhere. So after a brutal 10-0 loss to who else but the Bruins, Imlach used the loss as an excuse to make Sittler's life a living hell. If he couldn't trade Sittler away, he was instead going to trade away everyone else who was closely associated with Daryl. One trade after another ensued as all of Sittler's friends were sent packing, and one of the casualties was Sittler's best friend Lanny McDonald, who got dealt to the Colorado Rockies for Wilf payment simply for being Daryl Sittler's friend. After the trade, many fans protested the move, and Sittler, enraged by the deal, infamously ripped the C off his chest before the game that Saturday night, causing even more moves to be made. But when the Leafs lost Lanny, a hole was definitely missing, as most know just how great he would continue to play once leaving the Leafs. Eventually earning himself a Stanley Cup with Calgary in 1989, he became a Flames legend, eventually entering the Hockey Hall of Fame. But he was once ridiculously moved to an extremely bad team simply for being friends with a player who management seemed to heavily despise. Another player management seemed to dislike was Tyler Sagan during his time as a Boston Bruin, as although he played a big role at such a young age, they seemed to dislike Sagan due to his age. The main thing was that Tyler was rumored to be a partier, and was often quoted as being immature, but what really seemed to set them off is an event that happened during December of the 2012-13 season, when Sagan would famously get scratched for missing team breakfast. Now, although this wasn't the primary reasoning behind the deal, it is still the one instance that many remember when talking about the Sagan trade, as during that same offseason, the Bruins front office was tired of Sagan's antics, trading him away to the Dallas Stars in a massive deal. Trading away such a young player is a major risk, and it seemed that the staff knew this as well, since there is literal behind-the-scene footage of the move being broken down. It's quite comical to watch as guys such as Jim Benning and Peter Chiarelli attempt to sound knowledgeable about making a deal, especially when after the move was made, when Sagan would prove everyone wrong by becoming a first-line center and a consistent 50-60 point producer in Dallas. The pieces that went back to Boston also weren't nearly as impactful as Sagan was to the Stars. I'll link the Behind the Bees special scene in the description below so you can watch the deal go down. But for this next player, imagine being given two options. Either hang out with some of your teammates after a game, or go out alone and take in a local museum. Well, if you were to ask Dougie Hamilton that question, supposedly he would have went to the museum. I say supposedly, as according to Dougie himself, the museum rumors were not true at all. What I'm referencing is the blockbuster trade that went down a few years back between the Flames and Hurricanes that sent Hamilton alongside of Michael Furland and Adam Fox to the Canes for Noah Hannafin and Elias Lindholm. Dougie Hamilton, during his final year with the Flames, played lights out, leading the team's defensemen in goals. He showed that he had extreme offensive upside despite playing on the blue line. But whenever the Flames lost, most of the blame seemed to land on Hamilton. I myself was guilty of this, but towards the end of his tenure, I realized just how beneficial he was to the defense. But what confused both NHL and Flames fans was the explanation, or the rumors, as to why the team traded Hamilton away. Most insiders stated that it was a chemistry issue, or that his goofiness rubbed players the wrong way, especially after a loss, basically implying that Dougie was barely serious. However, one rumor stood out amongst the rest, that Hamilton was traded for liking museums, and this seemed extremely out of left field, as you would think that trying to educate yourself or look at some paintings would actually be more mature. Well, apparently, that was the exact opposite, and showed that perhaps it was a chemistry issue and that he didn't fit in with the group. When being interviewed in Carolina, Hamilton completely shut the rumors down, stating he had no idea where that even came from. And funny enough, he actually got free tickets to some museums in Raleigh. Hamilton would state in the interview, quote, "It is what it is. It's not true, so I just try to laugh at it and believe in myself and who I am as a person." In his first season as a Cane, Hamilton would play like a borderline Norris candidate, so safe to say he shrugged it right off. But there was an actual Norris Trophy winner within the deal who played for neither team involved. That player being Adam Fox, who has definitely made a name for himself on Broadway.